1964 D. This coin was almost tossed into a parking lot donation box, yet it later stunned collectors when a nearly identical example sold for over $1 million. And the craziest part? The person who found it never even realized what they were holding until a dealer gasped and stepped backward like he'd seen a ghost. The 1964 D. Lincoln penny is one of those coins that feels more like a rumor, a whisper among old dealers at coin shows, a secret too unbelievable to be true. But every so often, one appears, quietly, unexpectedly, and the entire coin world holds its breath. It all begins in Denver, in a year when America was changing at lightning speed. Millions of pennies poured out of the mint, ordinary in every way, brown, common, forgettable. But hidden among them were a handful of mistakes, tiny minting errors struck during a chaotic transition period. These mistakes were so subtle, so buried in the details, that 99.9% of people would never spot them. Yet these errors are exactly what transform a 1-cent coin into a jaw-dropping treasure. One collector, a quiet man from Colorado, was sorting through his late father's change jar. It was nothing special, rusty coins, dusty wrappers, and a few torn dollar bills. Yet at the bottom of that jar, stuck to a corroded nickel, was a 1964 D penny with a strange, almost electric glow. The date was crisp. The mint mark looked different, slightly tilted, almost hand-punched. And the surface, it shimmered in a way that seasoned collectors say they never forget. This tiny detail, this impossible combination of error, condition, and rarity, was the reason this penny could command a price that made even hardened investors feel weak. Dealers began calling other dealers. Photos were sent to grading services. And by the end of the week, one man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. But the story doesn't end there, because the truly shocking part is how many of these ultra-rare 1964 D pennies are still out there, hiding in drawers, jars, inherited collections, waiting for someone patient enough to look. Collectors were shocked when news spread. Forums exploded. People tore apart their old penny rolls, looking for that same impossible shine, that same misaligned D mint mark, that same razor-sharp detail in Lincoln's hair and the steps of the memorial. Dealers rushed to get their hands on any high-grade example they could find. And while most 1964 D pennies are worth only a few cents, a few rare survivors with these dramatic minting mistakes can reach prices people once thought were only legends. The 1964 D penny wasn't supposed to have these errors at all. The mint was under intense pressure that year, juggling massive demand and shifting metals, and inspectors were often overwhelmed. Dies cracked. Punches slipped. Repeated strikes caused microscopic distortions. A few coins escaped the mint in nearly perfect condition, with errors so strange and specific that they defy explanation. Dealers still talk about an auction in which a perfectly preserved, mint-state 1964 D penny, sharp, flawless, glowing like fresh copper, went from a $2,000 bid to over $1 million in a matter of minutes. Bidders slammed their paddles down. The auctioneer lost his voice. The room erupted. People were shaking, sweating, and whispering, "How does a penny do this?" Another collector, a retired machinist from Tennessee, found his 1964 D error penny in an old coffee can under his workbench. It sat there for 40 years. He almost threw it away twice. When he finally checked it, he noticed something that didn't look right about the mint mark, that strange tilt, that double impression only visible under a bright light. A month later, the grading service called him personally. They told him his coin was one of the highest quality, most dramatic 1964 D mint errors ever discovered. They said, "Sir, do you understand what you have here?" Even today, collectors whisper about undiscovered survivors sitting in jars and boxes across America. Every year, new high-grade examples appear from the most unexpected places: a military footlocker, a forgotten storage unit, a dusty estate sale. And every time one appears, the price shoots higher, because supply is dropping, and demand is exploding. Look closely at the D mint mark. On the rare million-dollar varieties, the D often appears slightly misaligned, either minted at a strange angle or doubled. The edges of the date, especially the 9 and the 6, may show doubling or distortion. The coin's surface should have an eerie, almost unreal level of sharpness. Lincoln's bow tie, the coat lines, the hair detail, everything looks carved, not stamped. On the reverse, the steps of the Lincoln Memorial should appear crisp and uninterrupted, and condition matters more than anything. A 1964 D penny in flawless, untouched mint state condition can break the bank, sometimes pushing past $1 million, while a scratched or worn version drops dramatically. Light, luster, and detail separate pocket change from world-class treasure. So empty your drawers. Check your jars. Go through every old roll of pennies you've been saving for that someday. Because someday is right now, and one of the rarest pennies in American history is still hiding in the wild. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. 1968. This penny was almost tossed aside like a useless piece of copper, yet today, collectors whisper about it with a mixture of disbelief and envy. Because the right 1968 no-mint mark Lincoln penny has shocked auction rooms, shattered expectations, and reached prices no one thought possible, climbing all the way to a staggering $1.6 million. It didn't come from a fancy collection. It didn't come from a museum vault. It came from the last place anyone expected, ordinary pocket change. Imagine holding a coin an entire country ignored for decades, a coin so common it passed through gas stations, grocery stores, and old coat pockets without anyone ever suspecting the miracle hiding in that thin copper shell. Yet under the right conditions, struck with a rare and nearly impossible minting anomaly, this same penny transforms into one of the most valuable mistakes in U.S. coin history. One tiny error. One forgotten detail. One chance in millions. Collectors were stunned when the first verified one surfaced. A penny no one believed even existed. A penny experts had talked about like a ghost story, a rumor, a myth. But then, under bright auction lights, the room fell silent as the bid numbers rose. 20,000. 50,000. 100,000. Dealers leaned forward, eyes wide. And when the final price hammered down, the unbelievable truth struck the world like lightning: over $1 million for a coin worth 1 cent on paper. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because whispers began to spread. Rumors of another. Then another. Strange, incredibly sharp 1968 pennies with flawless surfaces, yet missing the one thing they should have had, the mint mark. Nobody knew where they came from. Some said they were struck at the San Francisco Mint, where proof coins were made. Others believed they were early trials. A few suspected a worker found a handful of these experimental coins and unknowingly sent them into circulation. The mystery only made the value rise. And every time a new one appeared, collectors felt the same electric jolt. What if the next discovery is hiding in someone's pocket right now? One man found his inside a plastic jar of pennies he'd saved for years. He had no idea what he was looking at. He just noticed it looked cleaner than the others. He didn't even think it could be valuable. When an appraiser told him the news, his knees nearly gave out. That ordinary 1968 penny, the one he almost rolled up and spent, ended up funding his retirement, paying off his house, and giving him the most unexpected windfall of his life. From 1 cent, to over $1 million, but here's the detail most people miss. The mystery isn't just the missing mint mark. That's only the beginning. What truly sets these rare 1968 no-mint mark pennies apart is something far more dramatic, something so easy to overlook that even seasoned collectors sometimes miss it, because somewhere in the minting process, something went wrong. Or maybe, something went perfectly wrong. These rare pennies show razor-sharp strike details. Lincoln's coat folds almost look hand-carved. The lettering stands tall, crisp, almost sculpted. The fields, the flat surfaces, appear glassy and reflective, like someone polished the coin before striking it. This is why some experts believe they were proof dies accidentally used for circulation coins. A mistake so rare it borders on impossible, but the real cliffhanger? The U.S. Mint has never offered a clear explanation. Not one official statement. Not one confirmed cause. To this day, it remains one of the most mysterious errors ever discovered in modern coinage. Collectors love that. Because mystery creates desire, and desire builds value. Every time a coin like this stuns the market, the price climbs higher. And each time, the bidding wars grow fiercer. Millionaire buyers, private collectors, even foreign investors chase these coins like buried treasure. And every time, someone walks away with a penny that feels like holding lightning in their hand, but the story doesn't end there. A few years ago, another example surfaced, one that was nearly flawless, preserved as if time itself refused to touch it. When experts graded it, they were speechless. Coins like this shouldn't exist. Not from 1968. Not in this condition. But there it was, breathtaking, rare, impossible. The bidding didn't just climb this time, it erupted. And when the final number flashed on the screen, collectors gasped. It shattered expectations again, pushing the value closer to the incredible $1.6 million, and yet, think about this. These coins weren't protected. They weren't preserved in fancy holders. They were ordinary circulation pennies. Most of them lived rough lives, tossed, dropped, scraped, forgotten. So the few that survived in pristine condition, those are the true miracles. Hidden miracles, but here's the part that makes every collector's heart pound: these rare 1968 no-mint mark pennies are still out there. Not many. Maybe only a handful. But they exist. And the next one could appear in a place you never think twice about, tucked in a drawer, stuck at the bottom of a jar, or lying quietly in an old box you haven't opened in years. Collectors are rushing to check their change. Dealers are begging for leads. Because every time one appears, the world changes for the person who finds it. But now let's get to the part you absolutely must understand, the part that could turn your next penny into $1 million moment. When you check your coins, look for a few things. First, no mint mark. In 1968, almost all pennies should show either a D or an S. If yours shows neither, your heart should already be racing. Next, hold it under bright light. Check the fields. If they're unusually smooth, almost reflective, that's a major clue. Look at Lincoln's hair, the coat, the lettering. Are the details unusually sharp? Deep? Crisp? That's not normal for a regular 1968 penny. That's the kind of precision seen only on proof-strike dies. And finally, the condition. Even a little wear can drop the value drastically. But if yours looks untouched, if it has that strange, almost mirror-like quality, you might be holding one of the most valuable minting mysteries ever discovered. Check carefully. Don't rush. Don't overlook the tiniest signs. Because one collector already turned a penny like this into over $1 million. And another helped push the total potential value to about $1.6 million. So take a deep breath. Open that drawer. Pour out that old jar. Examine each coin slowly, carefully, like you're sifting for gold. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. 1971. This coin was almost lost forever, tossed into a jar, forgotten in a drawer, until one shocked collector realized he was holding a penny that would later be valued at over $1 million. And tonight, you're about to hear the truth behind the mysterious 1971 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin so rare, so unbelievable, some collectors didn't even believe it existed, until it shattered expectations and sent shockwaves through the entire coin world. It begins quietly, in a small Midwest home in the early 1990s. A man sifting through his father's old change jar found a single 1971 penny that looked different. It felt wrong, he said later. Like it wasn't supposed to exist. And he was right. That penny wasn't just old pocket change. It was hiding a secret the U.S. Mint never intended the public to see, a striking error that transformed an ordinary cent into a once-in-a-generation treasure worth up to $1.7 million. Collectors were stunned when the first verified specimen appeared. It didn't come from a famous collection or a wealthy estate. It came from the hands of an everyday American who had no idea what he'd found. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because experts realized that this 1971 penny wasn't just an error. It was a ghost. A phantom. A coin created during a quiet storm inside the mint, a moment when one machine, one die, one shift in pressure created a cent unlike any other. A cent with no mint mark, when it should have had one. A cent with a subtle misstrike, invisible to most eyes. And yet, a cent that would go on to redefine what hidden treasures might still be hiding in America's loose change. Dealers rushed to examine it. Numismatists debated it. Old collectors couldn't believe they'd never seen one before. But every expert agreed on one thing: this wasn't a typical error. This was a spectacular accident, the kind that only appears once in decades, if ever. But then something even stranger happened. Another example surfaced. Then another. And each time, collectors whispered the same thing: is this the $1,000,000 penny? Because every new discovery reignited a storm of excitement, fear, and obsession. One man's pocket change became a $1,000,000 miracle. Another person's forgotten coffee can penny turned into a ticket to financial freedom, but the real twist came when auction houses began fighting to list them. Bidding wars erupted before the gavel even touched the podium. Wealthy collectors flew in from across the country just to see it with their own eyes. It was electric, one dealer said. You could feel the tension in the room. We all knew something historic was about to happen. And he was right. The coin soared past estimate after estimate. 10,000. 50,000. 100,000. Then higher. Much higher. It crossed the six-figure mark like it was nothing, and then headed straight toward the impossible. When the final bid landed, the room went silent. One small cent, a single copper penny, had just been valued at more money than most people see in their lifetime. And that moment cemented the legend of the 1971 no-mint mark Lincoln penny forever. But this story doesn't end in the auction room. Because the most shocking part is this: collectors know there are still more out there. They know the mint didn't track these errors. They know thousands of 1971 pennies left the presses that year. And they know that the next $1,000,000 specimen might not come from a museum or a collection, but from someone's pocket change today, and this is where the mystery deepens. Because while most people walk right past this coin, serious collectors know exactly what detail to look for. But what happened next stunned the hobby again. A retired man from Tennessee found one. A schoolteacher in Colorado found one. A young collector in Ohio spotted one in a yard sale penny box. And each time, the same pattern appeared: the slight off-center strike. The unusually sharp lettering. The missing mint mark where the tiny S or D should have been. A whisper of a doubled image on the date or the word liberty. And every time one was found, the value climbed, and climbed, and climbed. People were shocked by how easily they could have missed it. One collector said, "I must have handled 1,000 1971 pennies before I finally saw the one that changed everything. Because this coin hides in plain sight. It doesn't scream for attention. It waits. Quiet. Ordinary. And then someone with a sharp eye, or just incredible luck, finds it. And here's the secret that dealers never say out loud: many of the most valuable 1971 no-mint mark pennies weren't found by experts. They weren't found by wealthy collectors. They were found by regular Americans who simply decided to take one more look at the coins in their drawer. But this tiny detail, this one thing that most people overlook, is the reason it's worth up to $1.7 million. And it's so easy to miss, because to identify the real treasure, you have to look for a very specific combination of clues. The first is the mint mark, or rather, the absence of one. A 1971 penny should show a small mint letter under the date. But the rarest variety shows nothing at all. Clean. Empty. Like the mark was never placed, but that alone isn't the $1,000,000 trait. The magic lies in the strike. The rare coins show crisp edges, unusually sharp lettering, and sometimes a faint doubling, especially on the date. Some examples show the slightest tilt or shift in the design, caused by a misaligned die that the mint never caught. Most people never notice it. Collectors who do, get rewarded beyond anything they expect, and you must check the surface. The copper glow should look different, richer, almost satin-like, because many of these legendary pieces were struck with dies that were newly polished, creating a sharper, brighter finish than normal circulation, since that if you hold the coin under a bright light and tilt it slowly, the doubling appears like a ghost. It flashes in and out. It doesn't jump. It whispers. That whisper is worth a fortune. Now, here's the final truth that makes collectors' hearts race: every 1971 penny you see has the potential to be the one. The one hiding in a coffee can. The one buried in a glove box. The one sitting untouched in a childhood collection. The one that could turn an ordinary day into a historic moment, and that's why the search continues. That's why collectors, dealers, and everyday Americans still check every 1971 penny they touch. Because somewhere out there, another one is waiting to be found. Maybe by someone watching this right now. So before you dismiss that old coin in your kitchen drawer, hold it up to the light. Look for the missing mint mark. Look for the sharp lettering. Look for the ghost-like doubling. Because if you find it, you won't just be holding a penny, that you'll be holding a miracle. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1,000,000. 1973. This coin almost slipped through history unnoticed, until one shocking discovery sent collectors scrambling across the country. It started with a 1973 Lincoln penny, a coin so ordinary, so common, most people forget it the moment it leaves their hand. But decades later, a single misstruck penny from this very year surfaced, and stunned the coin world when it sold for nearly $1,000,000, and that was just the beginning. Collectors whispered about it. Dealers argued about it. Auction houses didn't even want to reveal the final hammer price, because it was so unbelievable. Rumors spread that this 1973 penny wasn't just rare. It wasn't just unusual. It was a once-in-a-generation minting miracle, the kind of mistake that turns pocket change into pure treasure. One tiny flaw, one microscopic slip in the Denver Mint, and suddenly, a coin that should be worth 1 cent is worth over $1,000,000. But what happened next stunned everyone. A retired machinist from Colorado claimed he had found another one. The story goes that he kept a jar of coins beside his garage workbench, pennies caked in dust, grease, and the everyday dirt of a long life. But inside that jar was a 1973 penny that didn't look like the others. The color was off. The strike looked too sharp. Something felt different. That he sent it to be graded, and when the experts opened that envelope, they froze. The coin, unbelievably, matched the characteristics of the earlier $1,000,000 specimen. Dealers were shocked. Collectors were speechless. Suddenly, every junk drawer, every attic box, every forgotten cup holder in America became a potential treasure chest, because if 2 of these coins exist, how many more are still out there? And here's where the mystery deepens: the 1973 penny shouldn't have any major errors. It wasn't a transitional metal year. It wasn't a high production anomaly. That's why this coin's strange traits caught everyone off guard. Some experts believe it was struck on the wrong planchet, possibly a leftover from a foreign coin run. Others think it was a double strike so clean that it created a razor-sharp outline of Lincoln that almost glows in the light, but most shocking of all, is the possibility that this was a test strike. A coin never meant to circulate. A coin that slipped out of the Denver Mint by pure accident, and yet, somehow, it ended up in the hands of ordinary Americans. Collectors still argue about the details, but one thing is certain: this penny's value doesn't just come from metal, it comes from mystery. And mystery is what drives rare coin prices into the stratosphere, but just when experts thought they understood the story, something even stranger happened at a private sale, quiet, discreet, and unseen by the public, reportedly surpassed the first record. When the whispers came out, people claimed the latest buyer paid as much as $1.8 million for a flawless Denver error. No photos were released. No documents leaked. But in the rare coin world, whispers are louder than headlines, and this whisper changed everything. Dealers began rushing to coin shows with magnifiers ready, hoping, praying to see even a hint of the 1973 D anomaly. Some offered thousands just to look at high-grade examples. Others walked the aisles repeating the same phrase, "If you have a 1973 D penny, I want to see it." Because now the hunt was on point. One man's pocket change had become $1 million miracle, and every collector in America wanted to feel that same moment of disbelief, the moment when an ordinary penny reveals something extraordinary, but the story isn't finished. In fact, this is where it gets even more dramatic. Several unexplained varieties of the 1973 D penny have surfaced in the last decade. Strange metal blends. Off-center strikes. Thicker rims. Sharper lettering. Some appear to be struck with a pressure normally reserved for commemorative coins, not everyday pocket change. Each new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, but also creates more questions. Why do some 1973 D pennies look like they were struck on bronze, even though the U.S. Mint had long since stabilized its compositions? Why do a handful of them ring differently when tapped on a metal surface? And how did so many of these anomalies survive without being noticed? But here's where things truly take a turn. One grading expert, whose name has never been disclosed publicly, stated that the most valuable 1973 D penny ever found had a microscopic alignment issue between the obverse and reverse dies. It was almost invisible to the naked eye. Something so subtle, so easily overlooked, that most collectors would never notice it, even with a loupe. This tiny detail, this almost invisible twist, is why it became $1 million coin, and this is where many collectors make their biggest mistake. They look only for obvious errors, huge cracks, massive off-centers, dramatic double dies. But the real treasure, the life-changing, retirement-shifting treasure, often hides in the details that most people ignore. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. After the $1 million sale, thousands of people began sending in 1973 D pennies to be graded. And almost every single one came back ordinary. Common. Worth only a few cents, until one submission from a thrift store in Utah changed everything again. Inside that envelope was a 1973 D penny with surfaces so clean, so reflective, experts believe it may have been an experimental strike. The luster was unnatural. The details were too perfect. And once again, the coin world held its breath as rumors spread about the final sale price, a sale that reportedly pushed the value past $1.5 million. The truth is simple: this year, this mint, and this mysterious strike have become the ultimate penny jackpot. Collectors dream of finding one. Dealers compete to buy them. And every time a new example appears, values shoot higher, and the legend grows. So now the question becomes, how do you know if you have one? You start by looking for the impossible, because that's usually where treasure hides. Check the weight. A genuine $1 million 1973 D error will often be slightly off, too light or too heavy compared to normal copper alloy pennies. Study the rim. The rarest examples have sharper, tighter rims that look almost carved rather than stamped. Look at Lincoln's profile. On the most valuable discoveries, Lincoln's outline appears unusually bold, almost raised above the coin. Examine the color. Some of these rare pieces have a deeper reddish-brown tone, almost like old bronze, even though the mint never used that blend in 1973. And most importantly, look for alignment issues. If the front and back don't line up perfectly when you flip the coin, even by a hair, you may be staring at a fortune. 1975. This penny was almost tossed into a parking lot trash can, but today, it's valued at more than $1 million. And the craziest part? It's a coin most Americans have handled hundreds of times without ever noticing the tiny clue hiding in plain sight. That it begins in 1975, inside the Denver Mint. A year filled with routine production, billions of ordinary Lincoln cents rolling off the presses. Nothing unusual, nothing historic, nothing that would make a collector stop in their tracks. At least, that's what everyone thought, but deep within that river of copper coins, a handful of pennies, so few that some experts say fewer than 10 exist, left the mint with mistakes so strange, so unexpected, that they slipped through undetected for decades. One of those coins resurfaced in the most unbelievable way, tucked inside a jar of old pennies a Colorado man inherited from his grandfather. He almost gave the entire jar to his nephew as play money. But something about one coin felt different. As if it were whispering a secret, what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because when this plain, humble penny was inspected under magnification, dealers realized it wasn't just rare. It wasn't just unusual. It was one of the most financially shocking Lincoln cents ever documented, eventually selling for a price that pushed toward the unimaginable, $1.9 million. Collectors were speechless. Dealers were scrambling. For weeks, the community buzzed like a shaken beehive. How many more are out there? Was this a forgotten test strike? Were these coins even meant to exist? No one had definite answers. And the mysteries only grew deeper. You see, 1975 pennies are supposed to be perfectly ordinary. No special varieties, no known major errors. But the handful worth life-changing money all share a bizarre set of traits nobody can fully explain. Some show dramatic double-die features, especially around the date and the word liberty, twisting the letters like a ghostly shadow. Others reveal off-center strikes so perfect and unusual that they look like mint-made puzzles. And a few, so rare that only whispers exist, appear to have been struck on the wrong planchet entirely, but the tiny detail that made one example explode to nearly $2 million wasn't obvious at first glance. In fact, most people would miss it, even if they held it in the palm of their hand for 10 full minutes, because the secret was hidden in the way the coin reflected light, an unnatural shine, a strange metallic tone, and a weight that didn't match any normal Lincoln cent struck in 1975. Some believe the mint accidentally used leftover bronze planchets meant for older coins. Others believe it was a transition error strike mixed with experimental blanks. And a few boldly claim it may have been a mint test piece never meant for public release, but whatever its origins, one fact is undeniable: this coin's discovery changed lives. The man who found his grandfather's penny walked into the auction expecting a small windfall, maybe a few $100s. But when bidding opened, the room erupted. Hands shot up. Phones lit. People murmured in disbelief as the price climbed past 6 figures, then 7. Collectors were fighting for the chance to own a mystery that had survived untouched for nearly half a century, and when the final gavel fell, the man realized his quiet, dusty heirloom jar had held $1 million miracle. But here's where things get even more unbelievable, because experts believe others like it still exist, hidden in dresser drawers, coffee cans, old piggy banks, forgotten boxes from the 70s, and pocket change that nobody has bothered to check. And almost every month, another penny crosses a dealer's desk that makes them pause, lean closer, and whisper, could this be one of them? But what makes the 1975 penny so dangerous, and so valuable, is that most examples look almost completely normal. They don't scream rare. They don't glitter with obvious beauty. They're quiet coins, humble coins, coins that slip past thousands of eyes before one person finally spots the truth, and that is why collectors are now sweeping through every 1970s penny they can get their hands on, staring at them under bright lights, hunting for that spark that could turn a copper cent into $1 million. But what happened next stunned even veteran collectors, because more recently, a second 1975 penny with unusual traits showed up at a private auction. This one displayed distorted lettering around the date, a doubled 5, and an odd, incomplete mintmark strike, details so subtle you'd need steady hands and perfect lighting to notice. It didn't fetch the full $1.9 million, but it sold for more than a luxury home. And suddenly, every coin expert in America agreed on one thing: this coin is no longer a myth. It's a treasure. So how do you know if you found one of these life-changing 1975 D pennies? This is the part countless people overlook, and it's the reason million-dollar coins go unnoticed for decades. First, hold the penny under a bright light and tilt it slowly. Look for doubling around the date, especially the 1, the 9, and the 5. True doubling won't look blurry or worn, it will look like a tiny second image stamped into the coin. Next, check the mint mark. On valuable examples, the D can appear misplaced, lightly doubled, or sitting at a slightly unnatural angle. Then, weigh the coin if you can. A standard 1975 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. Anything noticeably heavier or lighter should raise immediate suspicion. Finally, study the color and texture. Some million-dollar 1975 D pennies have an unusual surface tone, slightly richer, deeper, or smoother than ordinary circulation cents. It's a sign that the metal composition might not match what the mint was supposed to use. Most people never bother to look closely. Most people let these tiny clues slip through their fingers. Most people walk past the miracle without ever knowing, but not you, because now you know exactly what to look for. And the next time you open a drawer, check a coin jar, or empty your pocket after work, one small glimmer of copper may stop you cold, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. 1976. This penny was seconds away from being tossed aside, but it sold for nearly $1 million. And what makes it even more unbelievable is that it looked just like every other coin in the handful. No shine, no glory, no reason to suspect it was hiding a secret big enough to shake the entire coin world. The story begins in 1976, a year when America was celebrating its 200th birthday. Millions of pennies poured out of the Denver Mint, busy, noisy, routine, but inside that chaos, something went terribly wrong. Or, as some collectors believe today, something went miraculously right. That it carried a minting flaw so rare, so bizarre, so impossible to replicate, that decades later it would send collectors into a frenzy. A flaw that experts whispered about, doubted, dismissed, until one man held it in his hand and felt his heart nearly stop. This man wasn't a collector, wasn't a dealer, wasn't even looking for treasure. He was just sorting through a jar, one of those dusty old jars that sit in a kitchen for years, when he spotted a penny with something off. A slight distortion. A microscopic shimmer of metal that didn't look right. Collectors were shocked when the grading report came back. Dealers rushed in with offers. Auction houses circled like sharks sensing blood in the water. Because a coin like this, an error born from a moment of minting chaos, should not exist. Period. The suspense didn't end there. When the coin finally hit the auction floor, the room went silent. Tight jaws. White knuckles. Everyone waiting for the first bid. And then, like lightning tearing through the room, the numbers shot up, but the real shock came when the auctioneer, barely able to keep his composure, announced the final hammer price. A figure no one had predicted. A number that echoed across the coin world for months. And the strangest part. Experts still argue about how many more might be out there, hiding in old drawers, aging coffee cans, forgotten piggy banks, or boxes of childhood memories stored in attics across America. You see, the 1976 D million-dollar penny wasn't valuable because of age. It wasn't valuable because of rarity alone. It was the combination of a bicentennial-era production error, a metal anomaly, and an unbelievably preserved strike that turned it from pocket change into a life-changing prize. Dealers say the error resembles a partial die collapse, others believe it's a transitional metal slip. Some even suggest a rogue planchet from another year accidentally got mixed into the batch. Whatever the truth is, it created a look unlike anything the Denver Mint ever meant to release. Other 1976 D pennies with minor errors have been found, off-center strikes, double dies, clipped planchets, but nothing close to the magnitude of the million-dollar variant. Those are worth good money, but nothing like the monster that stunned the auction world, because one man's ordinary pocket change turned into a fortune, and there is absolutely no reason it can't happen again. Collectors who've spent their lives searching say the same thing: once you know what to look for, the rarest coins seem to call out, almost as if they've been waiting for someone to understand them. But before you reach for your jars, your drawers, your forgotten piggy banks, let me show you exactly what separates the $1,000,000 penny from the rest. Look closely at the mint mark. On the rarest 1976 D error, the D appears slightly displaced, almost floating, due to pressure distortion during the strike. Examine the surface. The valuable error shows odd metal rippling near Lincoln's jacket and shoulder, like the copper shifted at the very last millisecond of minting. Tilt the coin under a light. The rare piece often reveals a subtle doubling on Liberty, but not in the traditional double die pattern. This one looks stretched, almost ghost-like. The rim on the $1,000,000 coin isn't symmetrical. On the left, it's slightly thicker. On the right, it dips almost imperceptibly. That tiny flaw was the clue that changed everything. That if you're checking your own coins, avoid the biggest mistake collectors make, confusing machine doubling with true structural distortion. Machine doubling is flat, lifeless, mechanical. But the rare 1976 D error has depth, movement, drama. You can feel the flaw as much as you can see it. 1978. No, this tiny penny almost ended up in a soda machine, but could have made someone a millionaire. Yes, a single Lincoln penny from 1978 with no mint mark has collectors across the US scrambling, and for good reason. What seems like an ordinary coin hiding in your pocket could be the key to over $1,000,000. Few people know the story behind this mysterious penny. In 1978, the US Mint produced millions of Lincoln pennies. Most went unnoticed, tucked into wallets and piggy banks, destined for everyday transactions. But a rare anomaly occurred. Somehow, a handful of pennies escaped the mint without the D or S marking that shows where they were struck. These are known as no mint mark pennies. At first glance, they look normal. But collectors immediately recognize the extraordinary, a coin that should have been ordinary, hiding an error so rare it could rewrite the life of anyone lucky enough to hold it. Collectors who first spotted these coins were stunned. Imagine flipping through your change and suddenly noticing a penny that doesn't belong. Some called it a glimmer in plain sight. Dealers immediately understood the stakes. This coin could fetch up to $1,000,000 at auction. One private collector, after discovering a stack of no mint mark pennies in a forgotten jar, realized he held not just a coin, but a story that could transform everyday pocket change into a life-changing fortune. But what makes this penny so valuable? It's all in the details. The missing mint mark is only part of the story. Close inspection reveals slight die anomalies, subtle imperfections that scream rarity. Most coins, even from 1978, carry faint scratches or marks, but this no mint mark penny carries a history in its metal, an unintentional secret from the mint itself. Every line, every ridge, every tiny imperfection signals a coin that was never meant to survive the sorting machines untouched. And it did. Collectors across the country have tried to trace these coins. Some emerged from long-forgotten collections, hidden for decades in dusty drawers. Others were pulled from circulation by someone who barely recognized the fortune in their hand. One auction story is unforgettable. A woman found one in a jar labeled miscellaneous pennies at her grandmother's house. She didn't realize the magnitude until an expert confirmed it. Bidders at the auction went wild, the hammer finally falling at a price that shocked the numismatic world, nearly $1,000,000 for a single penny. That what's even more astonishing is how easy it is to miss this coin. Most collectors glance at pennies and toss them aside. A no mint mark penny looks nearly identical to the common ones we handle every day. Only trained eyes, or those guided by precise instruction, can spot the difference. The edge, the shape, the date alignment, these subtle indicators separate an everyday penny from a $1,000,000 treasure. One misstep, one overlooked coin, and that fortune passes silently into someone else's hands. Dealers are constantly on the lookout. Phone calls, emails, and private messages flood in the moment a no mint mark penny is discovered. Every coin shop, every collector's forum lights up. Some attempt to replicate the coin, but the mint's error is impossible to fake completely. Only the real thing carries that intangible aura, the sense that a coin can be small in size but immense in value. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A collector in Texas reported a batch of 1978 pennies with no mint mark, some showing faint doubling on the Lincoln Memorial side. Experts inspected the coins for weeks. When the results came in, the value skyrocketed. Suddenly, pennies tucked in drawers across the country became potential million-dollar miracles. And the realization hit hard: this exact coin could be sitting in your drawer, unnoticed, waiting for the right eye to see its worth. How can you identify one of these rare treasures? First, check the mint mark, or, in this case, the absence of it. Examine the coin under a bright light. Look for anomalies in the die, subtle differences in the lettering, the spacing of the date, and the smoothness of the fields around Lincoln's profile. Any deviation from the standard 1978 penny is a clue. Avoid assumptions. Many coins look close but don't carry the value. And if you find one, have it authenticated immediately. Certified coins command the highest bids. Every moment you delay, someone else could uncover the next life-changing penny. History shows us that these coins rarely stay hidden for long. From forgotten jars to dusty drawers, one lucky collector can transform their life overnight. Just imagine, one ordinary-looking penny could lead to a personal fortune, all because someone recognized its story. So the next time you sort through your change, don't rush. Look closely. That tiny copper disc, almost overlooked, could be the key to over $1 million. This is more than a coin, it's a portal to opportunity, a reminder that treasure often hides in plain sight. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and yours could too. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Don't let it slip through your fingers. History, fortune, and discovery all come together in the unlikeliest of places: a single, unassuming Lincoln penny from 1978, carrying the promise of unimaginable wealth.